You built a chatbot in LangChain 6 months ago, and now it's a tangled mess of chains, agents, and callbacks that nobody wants to touch. Every time you add a feature, 3 others break. Sound familiar? If you're drowning in abstraction layers just to make 2 components talk to each other, there might be a cleaner way to think about the problem. Let's be honest about how LangChain gets you here. It started as a helpful toolkit for stringing together prompts and models. But as your project grew, you probably reached for agent executor, then LCL, then custom tools, then memory objects, then a router chain to decide which chain to call. Each piece made sense in isolation. Together, they became a system where the control flow is scattered across a dozen files, and you can't trace a single request without a debugger and a prayer. The core issue isn't that LangChain is bad. It's that LangChain is a low-level framework pretending to be high-level. It gives you primitives and expects you to architect the orchestration yourself. When you don't have a clear mental model for how your agents should collaborate, you end up inventing one on the fly, and that improvised architecture is exactly what turns into spaghetti. This is where CrewAI takes a different stance. Instead of chains and runnables, it organizes everything around a simple metaphor, a crew of agents, each with a defined role, a goal, and a backstory, working through a list of tasks. You don't wire up the plumbing. You describe who does what. A researcher agent gathers information, a writer agent drafts content, an editor agent reviews it. The framework handles passing outputs between them. Here's a concrete example. Say you're building a tool that writes market analysis reports. In LangChain, you define a retrieval chain, a summarization chain, an analysis chain, and then manually thread the outputs together, managing state at each hop. In CrewAI, you define 3 agents and 3 tasks. The analyst task depends on the research task, and the framework sequences them automatically. Your code reads like a job description, not a wiring diagram. When you come back in 6 months, you can actually understand what it does. CrewAI also gives you first-class support for 2 things that are painful in raw LangChain: process types and delegation. You can run tasks sequentially, or set up a hierarchical process where a manager agent delegates work and decides what happens next based on results. That branching logic, which would be a nest of conditional chains elsewhere, becomes a configuration choice. And because roles are explicit, you can reason about behavior. If the output is wrong, you know which agent to blame and which prompt to fix. Now, this isn't a clean win for every scenario. CrewAI is opinionated, and if your use case doesn't fit the multi-agent collaboration model, you'll fight the abstraction. For a simple single-prompt task, it's overkill. And it's a younger ecosystem, so you'll find fewer integrations and less battle-tested tooling than LangChain's massive library. If you need fine-grained control over token-level streaming or exotic retrieval strategies, you may still want LangChain underneath. In fact, many teams use both, letting CrewAI orchestrate while LangChain handles specific tools. So the real question isn't which framework is objectively better, it's whether your problem is fundamentally about orchestrating collaborating agents or about low-level composition. If you keep drawing org charts to explain your system to teammates, CrewAI probably matches your mental model better than raw chains ever will. Try rebuilding one messy workflow as a crew this week. You might be surprised how much code you delete and how much clarity you get back.